his barons. This Great Charter was a landmark for the preservation of the rights of Englishmen. The Magna Carta is said to contain the origins of the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. Written in Latin, its English translation reveals to Americans the struggle that is not new to our people. In 1215, the struggle against government's tyranny and oppression was no different than today. The main grievance redressed by the Magna Carta was the administration's policy of extortionate taxation and financial plunder of the citizens. It also addressed the English freemen's rights to trial by jury, habeas corpus, no arbitrary search and seizure, and equality before the law. Articles 10 and 11 addressed usury and gave protection against foreclosure by ruthless usurers. 10. If anyone who has borrowed from the Jews any amount great or small, dies before the debt is repaid, it shall not carry interest as long as the heir is under age, or whomsoever he holds, and if that debt fall into our hands, we will take nothing except the principal sum specified in the bond. 11. And if a man dies owing a debt to the Jews, his wife may have her dower and pay nothing of that debt, and if he leaves children under age, their needs shall be met in a manner in keeping with the holding of the deceased, and the debt shall be paid out of the residue, saving the service due to the lords. Debts owing to others than Jews shall be dealt with likewise. Our ancestors warned us about Jewish usury 770 years ago. From these two articles we see that there is nothing new under the sun. Banking and usury is synonymous with Jewry. In 1215 the non-Jews who indulged in usury were put in the same category as Jews in terms of their standing before the law. Usury economics, otherwise called capitalism in its early stages, and communism in its more advanced stages, was planted in Christendom by Jewish merchants who had inherited the trade from Babylon. Today we need to renew the principles behind the Great Charter and being to learn again how to protect ourselves against Babylonian usury. The Bible, God's law, condemns usury and forbids it in Christian nations. Read Exodus 22:25. Lev. 25 hours 36 minutes, 37. 23:1920, Brov. 28-8, Isk. 1813. Jew-controlled meaning, an Israelite. The seed of Abraham. The chosen people of the Bible. Jews are perpetually persecuted by all other people on earth. Someone who practices the religion of the Old Testament, which is called Judaism. God judges the nations primarily by measuring each nation's relationship with the Jews. God blesses the nations which support the Jews, but he curses the nations which do not support the Jews. The Christian faith owes its existence to the Jewish culture from whence it was spawned. Intent, to bribe and prejudice Bible-ignorant Judeo-Christians into passively granting the Jews a carte blanche, license, to do anything they please with impunity. True meaning. The word Jew did not appear in actual use until over 1,000 years after the resurrection of Jesus. It means someone who adheres to the religion of Judaism, modern Pharisaism, or in some way considers himself a part of Jewish culture. For the modern Jew it has absolutely no racial significance. Jews are some of the most racially mixed people on earth due to their multinational history, their practice of interracial marriage, as well as their contemporary international bias. Down through the ages, they've moved from nation to nation as they were rejected, due to their immoral religion, by every land they've inhabited. Over 90% of Jews today are descended from the ancient Khazars, a racially non-Semitic people from East Europe and Asia. It is estimated that, of those who claim to be Jews, less than 5% have the slightest claim to the bloodline of Abraham. In our English translations of the Bible, the word Jew was incorrectly used to replace 1. Judahite in the Old Scriptures, which referred to someone from the tribe of Judah, or a citizen of the land of Judah, and 2. Judean in the New Scriptures, which meant resident of Judea, or a follower of the corrupted Babylonian religion of that area. Gentile-controlled meaning, anyone who is not a Jew, and thus a potential anti-Semite. Correct definition, from the Latin word gentilis, meaning of the same gens, clan or race. In the Bible, the word Gentile is a mistranslation of the Old Testament Hebrew word goy, and the Greek New Testament word ethnos, both meaning nation or people, any nation or people, and should have been translated as such. It does not mean non-Jewish. Get the file Gentile_defined from ftp.net com/pub/sf/sfa/Bible for an in-depth analysis. Speaking in tongues church meaning, the divine gift of uttering unknown, uncontrollable sounds. A secret, heavenly language of angels shared with select mortals. Speaking in unknown tongues is proof of a person's acceptance with God. Sometimes called glossolalia in charismatic circles. Correct meaning, tongues is an Old English term for dialects or languages. Speaking in tongues indicates the ability to converse and communicate in a dialect other than your own native tongue. The disciples who spoke in tongues, in the book of Acts, were communicating in foreign languages. Whether their ability was due to their own learning, or due to a temporary supernatural gift received from God, the result was the same. They communicated with men of other nations and dialects. Churches have wrongly equated speaking in tongues with frenzied religious babbling and ecstatic mumbling. In fact, the true tongues of Scripture has nothing in common with the popular ecstasy religions seen in churches, which is only delusion and make-believe. Before the time of Christ, both Plato and Virgil describe ecstatic speech among the Greeks and Romans, which compares with the modern charismatic church experience. Ecstatic religion is very old. Fits of ecstasy, accompanied by irrational babbling and loss of control, were common in pagan cultures, as it is in churches in America. Superstitious cultures have always tended to regard public demonstrations of spirit possession, seizures, insanity, and forms of dementia as being manifestations of divine influence. New World Order controlled meaning, a new term used by President George Bush in reference to an improved state of international peace and unity. The term was popularized during the war in the Persian Gulf. Bush has not publicly defined the term, but the general assumption is that the NWO enhances Americanism and is a good thing. Correct meaning, the New World Order is not a new term. It has been used as a generic, perhaps cultic, term by several regimes whose goals were to establish some form of improved society. A version of this term was adopted by the United States government, not long after its inception. This term, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the New Order of the Age, remains with us today. It is on the back of the $1 Federal Reserve note. In more recent history, Hitler promised to establish a new world order in Germany. However, this reference is rarely mentioned due to unpopularity. The term, itself, is the Masonic counterpart to the Church's millennium. Masonic religion looks to a state of international bliss in which Masons have complete control. A preoccupation with the NWO reflects a fascist, Marxist and Masonic bent for world government. Land ownership controlled meaning, sole title and control of land, including the right to profiteer on the buying, selling and trading of that land. Correct meaning, to hold land for your personal use. However, in the U.S. constitutional system, private ownership of land is impossible since all land is claimed by the government. Individuals are permitted to live on the land by paying rent, taxes, to the owners, Gov. In Scripture, however, the Lord, Yahweh, is the owner, controller of all land by virtue of his _power_ and the fact that he created the earth, Exodus 19:5, Lev. 25 hours 23 minutes. Man is granted _untaxable use of the land from Yahweh. Western culture has developed two legal terms defining the holding of property, 1. Allodial 2. Fee simple. These two terms can be used to define the relative roles of God and man in the ownership of land. 1. Allodial ownership is the holding of land by power_. This ownership rests strictly upon strength and determination, that is, the effort and ability to take, and forcibly keep, the land. It is the most basic expression of ownership. Among men, allodial land holdings are won, and kept, by force. 2. Fee simple ownership is the holding of land granted from a higher power, usually a king. Fee simple means without fees, taxes or payments. This land title is good as long as the grantor remains in power. God is the allodial owner of the land. Lev. 25 hours 10 minutes and 23:4. He grants a renewable fee simple land title to families for 50 years. At the end of 50, the grant is re-evaluated to make sure it is still suitable. Man cannot lawfully speculate for profit on land. It cannot be transferred out of the family. Thus, the next generation does not lose its inheritance. Paradise controlled meaning: 1. Heaven, 2. A holding place for disembodied souls awaiting transport to heaven. 3. Place of bliss and pleasure. Correct meaning, from Greek paradisos, and Hebrew pardes. Literally, a park, or a protected area, kept safe, as a garden, a guarded place with walls, hedges, and a guardian, husbandman. The park, garden, paradise, figure is used in scripture in connection with cities, kingdoms, etc. as areas kept and guarded, for example, Tyre in Ezekiel 28 hours 13 minutes, Zion in Isaiah 1-8, 51-3, Joel 2-3, Israel in Isaiah 5-17. Cities often incorporate the garden or paradise theme, for example, Stuttgart and Weingarten. Germany, Leningrad and Novogardia, Russia. Israel is a vineyard kept, protected, by God's laws, that is, walls or hedges, as a garden. Kindergarten means child care or protection. The paradise kingdom of Eden was figuratively called a garden, kept by God's laws. In Genesis 3:24, angels kept the way of the tree of life, God's laws, in Eden. Again in Acts 19:9, 23:22-4, the way refers to Christ's ecclesia system, in which Jesus is the husbandman of the vineyard of God. Thus, a paradise, in Scripture, is a community or kingdom that is protected and kept. It is not a mythological utopia of bliss and pleasure. Militia-controlled meaning, citizens enrolled temporarily as government soldiers in times of emergency or when the regular army is insufficient. The militia is called, organized and controlled exclusively by the government, at the government's discretion, and for the government's purposes. Correct meaning, the militia is the people's army, not to be confused with the government's army. The government's army is called the regular army. Its purpose is to protect the government, not the people. Militia means those who struggle, fight, make war, from the Greek milos, war, maul bad, molest, maul, malign, malady, etc. The militia concept predates the U.S. government. When central government took over in America, it assumed control of all armed forces, including the militia. To protect its position of power, it prevented the people from having their own armies. The first and foremost obstacle to any central government is the people over which it intends to rule. The people must be overcome and reduced to slaves first. The people cannot be allowed to have organized and working militias with which to protect themselves and guard their freedoms. Thus, in today's constitutional government vernacular, the militia is described strictly as a constitutional tool of the government, nothing more. However, in order for any society to be free from internal conspiracies to enslave, as well as encroachment from outside, the people must organize voluntarily among themselves. Landowners will fight when necessary to keep their freedom and protect their land, and their family heritage. Fighting for one's own land, property and family is quite different from being paid, and/or forced, by the government to fight for the right of multinational corporations to control and plunder the people of the world. Any militia that is a tool of the central government must be viewed as the enemy of the people. Leader-controlled meaning, someone with the ability to control people. Great leaders must have the charisma to excite and move great numbers of people for any particular cause. Natural leaders are born with this ability. With the potential power of today's printed and electronic media, leaders have more power than ever at their disposal. One short broadcasted speech from the president can excite and move millions for any chosen goal. Such leaders are necessary to maintain government and progress. Correct meaning, a true leader is someone who leads, not someone who calculates, manipulates and controls from a position of power. A leader must be first to do whatever he is asking others to do. Rulers and dictators are not leaders. Gurus and con men are not leaders. Preach